Hello, once again. Here we are for our 21st live session of the Inner Circle of Lepanto Institute. I am glad to see you guys here. Why don't we take just a moment to allow others to filter in as time permits, and then we'll get started. So why don't we give it just a few more seconds, maybe a minute, just to allow people to come on in. Let's see here. Okay. All right. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started with a prayer? In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostri. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All righty, very good. So I think today we're going to be a little bit shorter than we have in the last several sessions. Last several sessions, we've run 45 minutes to an hour. I think this week I'm going to shoot for more like half an hour, maybe just a little bit over that. I've got a lot going on, and I've got a lot of work to do, and I have a lot going on. So I just need to make sure that I don't go too long today. But why don't we go ahead and get started? So the first thing I want to touch on is that obviously today was the March for Life. I didn't get a chance to go today. As I said, I've been extremely busy. I've got a lot of administrative stuff going on. I've got taxes coming up I have to file. I've got to get out a bunch of letters to all of our donors and supporters, and I only have a couple more weeks to do it. And of course, splitting time all last year in Detroit really kind of put me behind. So I've been playing catch up ever since. And it's been a little bit difficult to stay on top of things. So I didn't get to participate in this year's March for Life, unfortunately. I've been so many times, and it feels odd not being there. But my wife, my children, and I, we prayed in solidarity with the babies and with all the marchers, and prayed for safety, and so we were there in spirit, definitely praying the rosary. So there we are. But it's in light of the March for Life, I started thinking about really what's happened. We have now 60 million children. 60 million. It's a number you can't even wrap your head around. I mean, you can't even conceptualize. It's hard to conceptualize even a million, but 60 times that, 60 million children. How do you even quantify that? How can you think about that? You can't. These are personalities we will never get to know. These are individuals who have an individual soul that in this life we will not know. That's 60 million. I mean, that's a city. That's a city. And in some countries, that's a country. I believe that's, you think about the population of, I think that might even be more than the population of Montana. It's just absolutely staggering when you think about what 60 million means. So I've been thinking about the nature of abortion and what, not just what transpires. I mean, I've seen video of abortion that's more than twice the population. There we go. Wow. I've seen video of abortion. When I first started working for American Life League, I was more than twice the population of Australia. There you go. 60 million people would be wiping out all of Australia twice over. A whole country wiping it out. but as I said, when I was working at American Life League, I actually made myself watch uh, film that portrayed abortion, showed abortion, because for my personality, the kind of person that I am, I need to know what it is that I'm up against, and I forced myself to watch a video of abortion, and I had nightmares for several months, consistent, recurring nightmares for several months. Nightmares where I woke up crying. Um, it was absolutely horrifying. And I remember distinctly shortly after I started working for American Life League, my wife had a baby, and I remember looking at that baby and weeping and thinking about, how I have a baby in my arms, and just a few moments before she was born, um, a doctor could have killed her. You know, it's just thinking about the horror of it. And then, you look at the news now. I don't know if you guys watch, you read news articles and things like that. When I pull up news, a lot of times on the sidebar, you'll see related news or other news from that area, or, a lot of times they're shocking things. But I can't tell you how many times in the last year I have seen news accounts of adults murdering children, 2-year-olds, toddlers. Uh, there's a babysitter that just recently went to prison. She murdered the 2-year-old child of the woman that she was watching this kid for. Um, and it turns out that she had a history of violence, a history of abuse with children. But the culture of abortion has produced a society that does not value life, even now, once the child is born. If you start with killing children prior to their birth, that philosophy carries through, and then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at what stage of life they're in. Your value of that other person's life inherently is down. It automatically goes down. And I did a little bit of digging, and I remember reading this from when I was in college. This is Plutarch. I don't know how many of you read Plutarch's Lives, but this is his account of the horrible evil that was Carthage. Um, Carthage, if you remember from history, Carthage was the civilization that almost wiped out Rome. The Punic Wars were all about the war between Rome and Carthage, and the way those wars went. I mean, you have to see the hand of God in those wars. In Carthage, Carthage was the premier port city in the entire ancient world. It had the best navy. It had the best military. It had all the wealth. I mean, it was incredibly wealthy. And Carthage, I mean, it was literally the center of the rest of the civilization. If you went into Carthage, you had ghettos of all the different ancient civilizations. You had the Greek ghetto, the Etruscan or Etruscan ghetto. You had various African tribes who had various ghettos that were in the city of Carthage. It was split up, and there it was a mecca. You would see just about everybody in the world showed up in Carthage. That's where all the trade took place. It was a port city of immense wealth, absolutely immense wealth. And so Rome, the Romans, wound up going to war with Carthage. And I don't remember exactly what started the war. I can't recall what it was that started the war. But what the Romans really hated about the Carthaginians was that they practiced child sacrifice. And the Romans, as brutal as the Romans were, never practiced human sacrifice. And the Romans had a very, very strong attachment to core family values. They really valued and revered the family. which I think in part is one of the reasons why our Lord chose Rome as the vehicle for spreading Christianity. It was the first of the pagan world to convert. And it took the blood of the martyrs to do it. But, even still, the Romans did not practice child sacrifice. They did have abortion, they did have contraception, but they did not practice child sacrifice. So, but the Carthaginians did. And the Romans viewed the Carthaginians as wicked. I mean, absolutely vile, the worst of the worst. And so they went to war, and the Carthaginians, having this massive army, they wiped out the Roman army, and very almost went into Rome and destroyed it. They almost did, but for whatever reason, the Carthaginian general, I believe it was Hannibal, decided that it's not worth it, and turned around and went home. And so Scipio Africanus and several of the other Roman generals finally, after being routed, I mean, their army was decimated, they got back together and they reformed a new army. And they said their whole mantra was Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. And so they regrouped, they reformed their army, and then they went on the offensive, and it was this long, protracted war. But in the end, the Romans went into Carthage and demolished it. They leveled the entire city, and then they salted the earth so that nothing would ever be able to grow there again. They absolutely decimated Carthage, absolutely wiped it out. Now, Carthage, and here's the other side of the story that people don't really think about, but Carthage at that time was part of a larger series, or a larger network of other cities, city states. I mean, you didn't have nations the way we have them now, which are basically large regions that have metropolitan sprawl throughout. Yeah, that's right. It was fought for the control of Sicily. That's right. I'd forgotten about that. But the various other cities that were part of the Carthaginian civilization, I guess you would call it the Carthaginian civilization, but it was Carthage, and then there were other cities that were aligned with Carthage. The other cities that were aligned with Carthage included the promised land of the Jews. So when the Jews went into Jericho, when they entered into the promised land and they started fighting against they conquered all of Israel and moved their way through, those were some of the cities that were aligned with Carthage. They were part of the same network. So with the Romans going to war with Carthage in the Mediterranean, it kind of, in a way, freed up some of the military that may well have fought against the Israelites. It was around the same time. So the Israelites were in a prime position for taking the promised land. So it all kind of comes together, is kind of the point. But here's what I started thinking. I started reading Plutarch's Lives, and I was reading this quote from Plutarch. And he said this of the Carthaginians: with full knowledge and understanding, they themselves offered up their own children, and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut their throats as if they were so many lambs or young birds. Meanwhile, the mother stood by without a tear or a moan. But should she utter a single moan or let fall a single tear, she had to forfeit the money. In other words, the money that she received after selling her child. And her child was sacrificed nonetheless. And the whole area before the statue was filled with a loud noise of flutes and drums. Took the cries of wailing should not reach the ears of the people. Here's what I thought of as I was reading that, and I was thinking about this, that the drums and the flutes would drown out the cries of the mothers. And we think about the modern drums and the modern flutes. In how would that translate in what we have now? And I think the way that it translates is in the form of the media. The media won't tell the truth about what abortion is. They won't tell the truth about women who have endured abortions and have suffered because of the abortions that they've had. They won't tell the truth about what it really means that we've lost 60 million babies. And that's just in the United States. Just in the United States. 60 million. Those drums and flutes that come from the media, and of course this includes the dark satanic music that gets played on the radio and is very popular in some darker circles. It also includes the horror movies. It includes television and how television is trying to make a joke out of abortion. Why would they need to make a joke about this? Because if they can joke about it, then they can discredit it as something serious or something that's really a problem or something that should even be addressed. They have this need to diminish what an abortion is, in the same way that the Carthaginians had a need to diminish what a human sacrifice truly is, especially of a child, the youngest of the children. So my thoughts on abortion and the things that go on today, it's very hard for me to contemplate these things and to consider what has happened without getting very upset. It's very difficult for me, especially having seen video of abortion. It's very difficult, but it should be. It should be. This is not something that should be easy or something that should be taken lightly. This is something that we should be thinking of with great terror, an incredible sadness. And when you think about, here's something else to consider. An abortion is robbery, not just of the life of the child, but it's robbery of heaven itself. We know, and this is a long theological and long protracted debate, and there are a lot of people that may disagree with this, but I've done a lot of research and a lot of reading on limbo, heaven, and hell, and the church fathers all agree with this, that the souls of children who are not baptized do not enter into heaven, but neither do they enter into hell, but they do enter into a place of perfect happiness, perfect natural happiness, this place we call limbo. And I was talking to my brother-in-law about this the other day, and we weren't necessarily talking about the souls of children, but he asked me a question about heaven and the kingdom of heaven and what that's like, and we were talking about the nature of it. And I started reading from the book of Revelations 21. And St. John says that he saw a new heaven and a new earth. Well, if we're all going to heaven, why would you need a new earth? What's the new earth for? And I think, this is a theory, this is not dogmatic. Please do not take this as anything more than my own thought process. I'm just trying to think this through and try to make sense of something. I think that the kingdom of heaven encompasses the new earth in the sense that the earth is where the souls of those who are not initiated, in other words, those who have not received baptism, but are neither guilty of mortal sin. So the new earth will be a perfect, an absolutely perfect dwelling place for those souls who do not merit hell, but have not been baptized. That will be kind of a limbo. And then the new heaven, the kingdom of heaven, the interaction between those who can get into heaven those of us who have received baptism, those of us who are initiated into the Christian rite, should we go to heaven, and I hope we all do, we will have the ability to enjoy eternity, not just in the kingdom of heaven itself, but also with those who are the souls that are in the limboic state, the new head or the new earth. And I thought about that also in terms of what the New Jerusalem is, because then St. John describes the New Jerusalem, and he talks about these massive walls, these huge walls, and then he talks about how all four of the walls have three gates on each. So 3 gates in the north, 3 gates in the south, 3 gates in the east, 3 gates in the west. That's 12 gates. Well, what do you need gates for? So a gate is to allow exit and entry, right? So what's the purpose of a gate if you're not coming and going? And if the New Jerusalem is the kingdom of God, it's heaven, where would anybody go? Because the only other real reality that we can think of is hell. So there's nobody going to hell, right? Purgatory won't exist anymore, but there is the new earth. And so I think that maybe that has something to do with the way we will interact. I don't know. It's just me musing. I'm just trying to figure out how this all plays through. But I like to think of it in terms, because I'm, as the father of 2 children who were miscarried, I certainly don't think that those children will go to hell, and the church absolutely does not say that, or says absolutely they will not go to hell. I know that they have immortal souls that will not die. They've not been baptized. I would have baptized them had they lived to birth. So I don't know. But if the theory or the teaching on limbo is true, then this kind of makes sense to me. Now, just to kind of fill that in a little bit, there is a story about a Romanian doctor who was an abortionist, and he had performed some 30,000 abortions, I think. Maybe it was 60,000 abortions. I mean, it was a huge number. And he had had a series of dreams. And in those dreams, they were all the same. He would see these children playing in a beautiful field. And they were all playing together, and they were all perfectly happy. But as soon as he showed up, they were afraid and they ran from him. And he didn't quite understand that. And then the last time that he had that dream, there was a man in Dominican robes that showed up, and he talked to the doctor and said, "Do you know who they are?" And the doctor said, "I have no idea who they are." And he said, "Those are the souls of the children that you aborted." And he said, and they run from you because they recognize you as the one who who caused them harm, the one who aborted them. And then he said, "Do you know who I am?" And this doctor said no, he didn't know who he was. He said, "I am St. Thomas Aquinas." Now, this doctor had never heard of St. Thomas Aquinas. He was not Catholic. He had no comprehension of Catholic teaching or anything like that. But through this dream, he not only became pro-life, he also became Catholic. Somebody must have been praying for him, because I can't imagine that our Lord would allow such a great grace to come to somebody who is mired in such horrible diabolical evil. But the case is that this man, this abortionist, became a Catholic pro-life activist in Romania because of this dream. And I think this lends a little credence to my theory that when he saw the souls of those children, first of all, in heaven, there's no fear. And I'm not saying that the children were actually afraid. That might have been kind of I don't know, a literary free license that comes with dreaming. But the children were in a state of perfect happiness there in a beautiful field. So I wonder maybe if he had also seen purgatory, or not purgatory, but limbo, what limbo truly is, that it's a place of perfect happiness. So I don't know. it's just some musing that I wanted to share with you. I'm just kind of thinking about this out loud. But I think it makes sense. And I just don't know how it works, but I don't know. I just wanted to share it with you. Moving right along, let's get into a few other things. I wanted to give you some updates. Number one, we are working on a new major project on the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. I, as you know, had conducted tons of research on the Catholic Campaign for Human Development over the years. When I was, yes, Ken, you're absolutely right. It's theory, not doctrine. But it's just a thought. So anyway, starting back in 2009, I started investigating the Campaign for Human Development. I found that they were promoting or funding organizations that were promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, Marxism, all sorts of stuff, even prostitution. As I would discover these things, I reported on them. The CCHD, of course, would deny it. The USCCB would attack me and say that I just hate their ideologies and blah, 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 blah. Well, in 2011, I wound up helping to form the Reform CCHD Now Coalition. And with that coalition, which included Human Life International, American Life League, LifeSite News, at that time it was called Real Catholic TV before it became Church Militant, Inside Catholic with Diehl Hudson, and a couple of others had joined the coalition as well. And in the course of my research, I wound up putting together a massive report. We're talking like 2,000 pages worth of documentation on about 70 or so grantees. And we broke it down by state, by diocese. I was able to show what these organizations were doing, in what way they were violating church guide or the guidelines for the CCHD and Catholic moral teaching. And so I broke it all down and I put it together in a report that was easy to navigate, easy to comprehend. It was all the information was right there. We are going to recreate this. We are going to, with the latest CCHD grants report, we're going to take that information, compile as much information on all of these groups as we possibly can, put it into a massive portion on our website. It'll be a new CCHD report on the website. And it'll be an easy one-stop shop for everybody so that they can find the information easily, go to their bishops and say, enough of this. Kill the CCHD. We're done. They went through a review and renewal back in 2010. It didn't work. They're still doing this stuff. They're still pushing the same agenda. It's time to end the experiment. We're done with this. I think that because we took the approach back in 2010, that we were not trying to abolish the CCHD, but we're trying to reform it, gave us a better position at that time to have discussions with bishops. They had the review and renewal. And now that things are not working, that they're ignoring the guidelines, that they refuse to reform, we can now turn around and say, hey, we tried reforming the system. We tried working with the individuals who were in charge. They didn't want to actually enact the charges or changes that they said that they were going to implement, and it's time to abolish it, especially in light of the mismanagement of the sexual abuse crisis. You bishops cannot afford to further damage your credibility by aligning yourself with the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. It's time to end it. So that's going to be our major push. We're going to spend an awful lot of time, and this is going to be a major focus in the coming months. We're going to focus a lot of time on all the CCHD grantees that we can possibly find. We're going to put together this comprehensive report and make it as readily available to everyone as we possibly can. We're going to push it and everything else. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Nobody else knows this yet, but that's what we are going to do. Give them hell at the CCHD. You bet. You bet. So moving right along, I want to give you an update on the petition that we're putting together on Nancy Pelosi, calling for Nancy Pelosi's excommunication. Do I need help? Sure. We could definitely use help with research. If you if you're able to help us with research, or send me an email. Send me an email, and we'll talk about how you can help or what skill set you can bring, because I don't know what your skills are. So why don't you email me, tell me in what way you might be able to help out, and we'll make this a huge deal. We'll blow the lid off of this. Anyway, to the Nancy Pelosi petition, we're very close to getting the landing page and everything all set up. I'm going to be working with LifeSite News to put together the petition page, and once all of that is in place and ready to go, we're going to launch, and we're going to make a big media to do about it. So we'll push that really hard. And what I'm going to ask all of you is, once it is launched, publish it as much as you can. Share it with as many people as you can. Put it on Facebook. Put it in different Facebook groups. If you're a member of a bunch of different Catholic Facebook groups, put it in there. If you're on Twitter, push it on Twitter. We want to make as big a splash with this as we possibly can. Because if we can get, say, 10,000 signatures calling for Nancy Pelosi to be excommunicated, I think that Archbishop Cordileone might pay attention. If we get 20,000 signatures, I mean, that would be incredibly huge. We could even do a story on that, put out a major press release saying 20,000 Catholics call for the excommunication of Nancy Pelosi. That would be a major headline, and I think it would get a lot of coverage in the news, especially in the current climate. So let's really make this as big as we can. So I'll be relying on you guys to help push it as much as you can too. But early next week, that's what I'm shooting for. I hope that we get the platform up and ready by then. It should be ready to go. And one other thing on what we're working on, I want to give you an update on this research that we're doing on global governance as it pertains to the Catholic Church. As you know, many in the church have been pushing this agenda of immigration. There's been this major push for opening the borders. And just recently, Pope Francis even said that he said immigration, allowing open border immigration is more important than national security, which is nuts. Excuse me, it's absolutely nuts. If you want to know how crazy it is, talk to the people in Germany. Talk to the women in Germany that have been raped, gang raped by Muslim immigrants. Talk to the people in Sweden that now have a massive problem with Muslim immigration and riots. Talk to the people in France. France is erupting, not just because of the yellow shirts or the yellow vests, but also because the Muslims are in an uproar too. Nobody's really talking about that. Talk about the massive influx of Muslims that are overrunning Italy. Okay. The immigration problem, because they threw national security to the wind, is like a powder keg. And all it's going to take is a little spark. And the next thing you know, this whole thing is going to turn into all-out revolution. And that's not an unrealistic outlook. But Caritas Internationalis and an organization called CIDSE put together a document called An Introduction to Global Governance in 2007. Okay, you can see it right there. Introduction to Global Governance, through the lens of Catholic social teaching, of course. But this is a real goal of Caritas Internationalis and the CIDSE. They are pushing this idea that we should have global governance. Now let's really dig into what that means. What are we talking about with global governance? We're talking about taking resources from one region and moving them to another region. It actually falls in line with Saul Alinsky's idea of taking from those who have and giving to those who have not. So you have this struggle between the haves and the have-nots. It's the class warfare that was talked about by Leon Trotsky and Vladimir Lenin and Karl Marx. This is a Marxist principle. Okay? Global governance is Marxist through and through. And it's not by accident that Caritas Internationalis and CIDSE are intimately involved with the World Social Forum. And the World Social Forum is an international communist organization that was started in Brazil. Okay, so the idea of global governance is something that is being heavily pushed by Caritas and CIDSE. Now, who's Caritas? Caritas is the umbrella organization for organizations like Development and Peace in Canada, CAFOD in England, Cordaid in the Netherlands, Catholic Relief Services in the United States, Trocare in Ireland. Okay, then you've got Caritas Sweden and Caritas Germany and Caritas France, which is also called Secours Catholique. So you have all these Caritas organizations, and they're all on the same page. They're all doing the same thing, and I keep catching them one after another in some way, shape, or form, promoting abortion, contraception, and that kind of stuff. Distributing condoms, even. Cordaid, which is one of the founding members of Caritas Internationalis, is giving money to Planned Parenthood. They are literally funding Planned Parenthood. So Caritas, in pushing global governance, it's all about population control, population resources, controlling the level of population, and trying to maintain this balance. That's what they seek. They want this balance so that you have just enough resources here to meet the number of resources here. It's socialism through and through. That's what it is. And they want to do it on a global scale so that all this interdependence that's going on is all about trying to maintain that resource balance, to make everything happen. So they're pushing global governance, and I'm going to be pushing a report. We're working on a report about global governance through the lens of Caritas and CIDSE, as they are pushing this agenda and what it means and why, especially. Here's the thing. If you want to know what the USCCB and international aid and development agencies are going to be pushing next, and what the Pope's sermons are going to be about, pay attention to what international socialist organizations like the World Social Forum decide they're going to push. Because what I have found is a trend. Every time the World Social Forum gets together and they say, oh, we need to worry about economic disparity and wage equality, the next thing I know, that's what the USCCB is pushing. And that's what I see coming out of the Vatican and all the Caritas groups. They're pushing wage equality. And then the next year, they'll say, we need to make sure that that people in Palestine have equal rights to the Israelites or the Israelis. And so they'll push for, breaking down the wall between Palestine and Israel and making sure that everybody is integrated and playing nice. And the next thing you know, that's a focus of the USCCB. That's the focus from the Vatican. Or then they start talking about the environment. And the next thing you know, that's what they're pushing. Oh, and by the way, the Pope writes an encyclical on it. And then they start talking about immigration and on down the line. The agenda gets set at the World Social Forum, and then it gets pushed out through all the various outlets. And one of those outlets is Caritas, CIDSE, and some of the other international social justice Catholic organizations. That's what this whole thing is all about. We're finding the network. It's all there. It's all together. They're all marching under the same banner, and they're pushing their agenda because the international socialists are deciding what they're going to do at the next meeting. So we're going to put together this report. We're going to talk about what global governance is, how it comes together, how it's being pushed through this whole agenda. And now I've told you several different reports we're working on. All of these things take time. So it's going to be a while before some of these things come out. But you're getting a first look at it because you're the inner circle. So that's that. And one more thing. Jane wrote in earlier this week, and she asked me to make a mention of this, and I'm going to bring it up here. So she said, if you don't mind my British focus, I should be very happy if you could make a brief comment about the situation here where the politicians, MSM, and particularly, MSM being the mainstream media, and particularly the BBC, are doing everything they can to stop our leaving the EU and frustrate the clear decision of the majority of voters in 2016 and in 2017. It is clear that we have our own swamp to drain of globalists, cultural Marxists, and elitist Soros supporters. Since the beginning of Advent, I've been praying to our Blessed Mother to intercede for us, that we may be granted a miracle to be able, despite everything, to leave thoroughly and permanently. I should be grateful for your prayers too, and those of other members of the inner circle. Leaving the EU is a necessary but not sufficient condition for regaining respect or even toleration for Christianity in our land. So going back to this push for global governance, CIDSE and Caritas are very careful to say that they're not pushing for a global government, only governance. In other words, they want to allocate resources and work together with various small groups to try and make sure that they can move these resources freely. But, you know, transgressing governmental borders and not being a part of a political system. They want to get out of politics. So they want to have kind of their own governmental system whereby these resources are reallocated and done through treaties and done through, various other diplomatic means. It's all part of the same thing. They're trying to push this global family. We are all one family. We're all part of the same group. We're all the same people. This is why the one world religion is such a big thing too, because you can't move across these borders freely if we all have different beliefs about how things work. So we have to break down those religious barriers and make everybody all the same and have this big melting pot of religion so that all of our philosophies and theologies all kind of come together and we're all indifferent to everybody else's religious beliefs. We're all indifferent to everybody's philosophical beliefs. And it all then boils down to how you want to, it's all resources. It's all resources. It's materialism at the core. It's all about materialism. And this exit from the EU that Britain is trying to engage in, it's important for Britain to leave the EU because the EU is once again all about breaking down those barriers, breaking down the national identities, breaking down cultural identities. Britain is trying to get out of that because at the heart of the EU is a very anti-religious movement. The idea of it is antichrist. The idea of United Nations is antichrist. All of it is antichrist because it's materialist at its core. It's all about allocating resources. It's all about economic wealth and everything else. So it's important for Britain to leave, and I will add my prayers for Britain to leave, and I hope all of you will too. So Robert says, if excommunication is too rich for the bishop's blood and isn't Pelosi excommunicated lasce sentiae already, what public actions, short of that, can we hope for beyond denying her sacraments? Well, here's the thing. Nancy Pelosi should be lasce sentiae excommunicated because part of the automatic excommunication that comes with abortion is doing something that would actually aid in the procurement of an abortion. And what she has done through her votes is aid in the procurement of abortion. She has made it possible and continues to make it possible for other people to abort their babies. And so therefore her participation in that should make her excommunicable. Okay, absolutely. But it's never been officially recognized by the church. And that's where the problem is. As long as it's not recognized by the church, there's been no interdict. She's not been denied the sacraments. She hasn't been told that she's to be denied the sacraments. And there's been no proclamation denying her the sacraments. But if Archbishop Corleone were to excommunicate Nancy Pelosi, then what would happen is that it would be a requirement in Washington, D.C. for the bishop there to recognize that excommunication, to maintain the excommunication, she would be denied those sacraments. But what we're looking for isn't just her excommunication. We're looking to use this as a vehicle to then, like a cascading event, and say, okay, Nancy Pelosi is now being automatically excommunicated. Rosa DeLauro should also be automatically excommunicated. I can't think of the other. Joe Biden should be automatically excommunicated. John Kerry should be automatically excommunicated. Okay, as we go on down the line, all of the other different Catholic pro-abortion politicians out there, Ted Kennedy, were he still alive, should be automatically excommunicated. We can then use this as a foundation for saying, hey, Pelosi was excommunicated. The same conditions apply to this guy, to that girl, to, on down the line. And all of those people should be automatically excommunicated. Your Excellency, please recognize the excommunication that was conducted by Archbishop Corleone, and apply the same principle to this politician, to that politician. Because if they start excommunicating these politicians, I don't know what to expect out of that, but I think that we will see the beginning of a turnaround against the culture of death in this country. At least I hope we would. I can't predict the future, but that's the hope, because I don't know. Nobody who's excommunicated has ever been elected, so I don't know how that would work. But it's a good start, and it's something that we can fight for, and it's something that we should be fighting for, not just because it's a political point or something that we can do to manipulate the system in order to produce pro-life politicians, but because, let's face it, Nancy Pelosi's soul is in grave peril. Grave peril. I mean, she is in extreme danger of losing her soul for all eternity. I don't want that. I know you don't want that. So what this is a great mercy. It would be an incredible grace for her to be excommunicated. And that's what we need to do. We need to pray and work for her excommunication, not just as a punishment, but for the conversion of her soul. And maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she doesn't. But, I would hope that she would take her faith seriously enough. Obviously she doesn't, but we can only hope. We can only hope. I'm not her. I can't control her mind. I can't control her thoughts. And maybe she would blow it off and say, you know what? Maybe I'm just not Catholic anymore. At which point it would be terribly sad, but it's a good start anyway. It's something that we can actually physically, personally do, and I think it's something that we ought to do. So let's put our hope in the Lord. Let's entrust the effort to His grace, and the results are entirely up to His anyway. And I'll leave you with this thought. It's more profitable that she doesn't believe her soul is in danger, another product of poor formation. Well, the question of culpability and everything else, but we also have an obligation to do whatever we can to bring the truth to her. And if we don't, then we carry the burden. So we have the responsibility of informing her. And even if she doesn't believe, if she rejects the truth, it's worse for her, but at least we will have done what we were called to do. And I'll leave you with this thought. Actually, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. Nope, it's gone. I lost my thought. But there it is. Our fight is for souls. Oh, that's what I was going to say, is that our God is not a God of results. He does not demand results. He's not like a major CEO who gets up there and starts talking about the bottom line and gets upset about how we're not making quota and everything else. God does not demand results. What he demands is that we are obedient, and that we are hopeful, and that we are truly observant of his laws. And if you think about this in relation to the parable of the three stewards that are given a different set of talents, you have the steward that was given 5 talents, the steward that was given 4 talents, and the steward who was given 1 talent. The one who got the 5 went out, invested it, came back with 10 talents. The one who got the 2, invested it, came back, returned with 4 talents. And the one who had the 1 talent was afraid. And what did he do? He went and he buried the talent. He hid it, put it in the earth. And then when the master came by, he dug up the talents and he went back to the master and he handed it to him and he said, I was afraid because I knew that you were a hard and demanding master. So I hid the talents. Here they are back to you. And he was the one that was bound and thrown into the outer darkness where there was wailing and gnashing of teeth. Why? Because I think those individuals who received the talents represent bishops. And the talents represent the souls that are entrusted to them. And the one who was given the 5 talents, and remember, a talent in those terms represents a year's worth of wages. So he received 5 years worth of wages, or that amount of money in souls. He was entrusted a large diocese. And so he went out, and with that large diocese, he worked hard and he doubled the yield. He brought in more souls to the church. What God doesn't value gold, but he values souls. So the steward is responsible for bringing back a large yield of souls. He's supposed to bring those souls back. And so he does. And he not only brings in the 5, but he has another 5. He has 10 talents that he hands over to the master. That's double the yield of souls that he had to begin with. The same who was given the 4. He went out, he did what he was supposed to, and he came back with another 2 or another 4 talents, making his yield or making his yield 4. The one who had the 1, he buried his talent, hid it. The master accused him of being lazy, said, lazy, wicked servant. Why did you not even put it in the bank where I could have received interest on the loan? Now, what's interesting about this is that that would have been the minimum. That would have been the bare minimum. And he would not have lost his talent had he done that. Our Lord is saying, had you even done the minimum, then that would have been enough. But he didn't even do that. What was the minimum? Putting interest in a loan or putting it in the bank. If the talents represent souls, and if going out and preaching is the way to bring more souls into the church, if the wicked servant wasn't preaching, but merely putting interest on a loan, what would he have been doing? He would have been maintaining the diocese appropriately, and he would have been living a good, virtuous individual life, just being a virtuous man, praying and fasting for his flock, because at least the flock itself would have produced children who would then become Christian, who would then be brought back and be raised into the church, and then that would be the interest. The interest is the children that are born to the diocese, and that's all that he would have been required to do. Make the money, the individual souls, produce more souls, and have them bring them into the church, raise them in the church, raise them in the truth. And that's what he would have required of him. That's it. When you look at the bishops now and you see that they are not sacrificing, you see that they are not doing what they need to do in order to bring souls into the church, and you see that they are also not even doing the bare minimum to make sure that their own people, the people in their own diocese, are not contracepting and aborting, and that they are raising their children properly, that their husbands and fathers are praying with their families and maintaining the faith and preaching the faith just in the diocese, just to themselves. But bishops aren't even doing that. And so the value that God places in each individual soul, what he wants is souls. And so that's what we want too. So our job, because the bishops are reneging on their job, is to pick up the pieces and to bring souls to Christ, because that's what he's asking of us. He's not demanding results. He's just demanding the effort. And so we don't have a God of results. We have a God of obedience. And that's all we're doing. That's all we're doing. So with that, why don't we just continue to pray our rosary? As we have the opportunity to meet new souls and to bring them into the church, we'll make every effort to do so. And in the meantime, we'll keep on keeping on. And I hope that that you all have a very wonderful week. I will see you next week. Hopefully, I will have the petition for the Nancy Pelosi excommunication effort ready to go. And I'll let you know how things are going in other areas at that point. So why don't we close with a prayer? In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostri. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. God bless you all.